First, we had the Japanese Importers Association in San Francisco. And we only have a few, maybe 4 or 5 people. So we invite people, Sacramento or Northern California. And we didn't have any Chamber of Commerce, so they should have they all agreed that we should have a Chamber of Commerce. So we start about 6, 7 people start Chamber of Commerce.
Although the first meeting was held in October of 1950, the Chamber was officially incorporated in spring of 1951. The Japanese American community was getting back on its feet after being evicted from the West Coast in 1942, incarcerated in concentration camps, and then allowed to return after the war. Many had lost everything during those years, and recovery was tough. Charter members like Hisao Inoue remember the early challenges and obstacles in getting the chamber off the ground.
First of all, is to get the members to join us, and financially, no money. And because of financial difficulties, we couldn't hire anyone. We had just one man, with a one-man outfit, with a small office on California Street. I think the address was 255 California Street. It's a hole-in-the-wall place.
The founding officers read like a Japanese-American business who's who list of the time, with names like Togasaki, Inoue, Shiota, Hirano, Masaoka, Moriwaki, Kuwada, Nonaka, and Ino. They agreed early on to one fundamental principle that sets the Northern California Chamber apart from any other Japanese chamber in the country.
First, our basic idea was we don't want to separate. We want to get the one Japanese Chamber of Commerce as including people from Japan and local people, or Issei or Nisei or something, everybody in there. But the others, Los Angeles, they had a separate group, but we don't want to do it from beginning. So, and we explained that to the people from Japan, and they understood that. So they all agreed and joined us.
Marvin Uratsu worked for American President Lines when he joined the chamber.
It was a very important time, and on the Japanese part, they were trying to make friends. The people in the Japanese Chamber of Commerce were trying to make friends with the general public, and then companies like ours were interested in developing good relations with the Japanese American community.
The San Francisco Obon Festival was one of the early events the Chamber helped to promote that first year. In September of 1951, 6 years after the Japanese surrender ended World War II, the international spotlight was on San Francisco as a U.S.-Japan peace treaty was signed. It paved the way for Japanese companies to reestablish themselves in the Bay Area.
With the onset of the Pacific War, all of those businesses that had been set up prior to the war, banks, for example, trading houses and so forth, were closed down and their properties and goods confiscated. So after the end of the war, many of them made a comeback, and you saw Sumitomo Bank re-emerging, you saw trading companies coming back. You saw a lot of those companies which had existed before the war re-emerging, and new ones coming on stream in the Bay Area.
Financially, the Chamber depended heavily on its members from the Japanese companies. They included financial institutions like Sanwa Bank in the Bank of Tokyo, and the trading companies such as Mitsubishi, Mitsui, and C. Ito.
We met at a Japanese restaurant, Tokyo Sukiyaki, Yamato. There was a general meeting itself. And after that, we all got together at the bar, talked about our companies, the business-wise and social-wise also. I personally enjoyed these meetings that I have attended too, because of the meeting the presidents and the managers of Japanese companies. They helped us as a local business, giving us their point of view.
In those early years, San Francisco City Hall often called upon the Chamber to act as a sort of unofficial liaison and advisory group for all things Japanese. This stone lantern in the Japanese Tea Garden in Golden Gate Park is an example. It was a gift from a group in Japan to San Francisco to commemorate the signing of the peace treaty and originally on display at City Hall. Through the efforts of the Chamber, the lantern found a more permanent home at the Japanese Tea Garden. But it was not necessarily all work and no play. One highlight of those early years was the annual New Year's party originally held at the old Scottish Rite Temple at Van Ness and Sutter.
It was a time to get together and share a drink and have a little entertainment.
We'd have little box lunches, actually, I recall. And we all used to sit together and eat together, and it was a smaller, intimate group.
We talking too much and about the Japanese, and the more about to make happy and like Japan. Still, the Japan, same thing, Then after about party and about everybody has dancing.
The purpose was twofold. It was to, socially get to know one another, and then at the same time develop business contacts and make their business grow.
When Japan Airlines began service between San Francisco and Japan in 1954, it transformed the relationship between the Bay Area and Japan. Previously, the trip had taken 1 week by ship. Now, it could be made overnight. Travel had never been easier. In 1957, Kikkoman Corporation established its first U.S. arm in San Francisco to market and distribute its products throughout Northern California. Kikkoman was the first in a series of Japanese companies that would make their American home in Northern California. At about the same time, an event that would revolutionize the 20th century was quietly taking place in the South Bay. The father of the silicon chip, William Shockley, started a laboratory near Palo Alto. This one action resulted in the $130 billion semiconductor industry and put the silicon into the valley. In San Francisco's Japantown, a transformation on a much smaller level was taking place, the redevelopment of J-Town. Plans were underway to raise much of the old neighborhood, widen Geary Boulevard, and to replace the older buildings with newer structures. The Chamber set up a special committee to help the Nihonmachi merchants.